Today, I want to chat with you about recognizing some of the signs and symptoms of an eating disorder relapse. My name is Shena, and I'm a registered dietitian specializing in the care of persons with eating disorders. I am also an eating disorder survivor. So, let's dig into some of the signs and symptoms that you might be about to experience an eating disorder relapse. Now, first, I want to note that lapses in eating disorder recovery are normal. And it's really important to distinguish between a lapse and a relapse. So we are going to have struggles in our eating disorder recovery. There are going to be days when we have very intense, intrusive eating disorder thoughts, and we even maybe intend to engage in some eating disorder behaviors. These things are normal. This does not mean that we are in a relapse or that we are not still ongoing in our recovery. But the important thing is to distinguish when a lapse has become a relapse. And we also want to be very cognizant when we are having thoughts about engaging in an eating disorder behavior so that it does not spiral into a relapse. So, what are some very common eating disorder behaviors that might trigger a relapse? Well, many times in our eating disorder recovery, we might think to ourselves, I am just going to engage in this behavior just once. I'm just going to count my calories today. I'm just going to make these certain foods off limits for this weekend because it's a really challenging endeavor and I'm around a lot more food than I'm comfortable with. I'm only going to engage in compulsive exercise today. I'm only going to engage in compulsive exercise or food restriction until I meet this certain weight. All of these are really good examples of red flags that you might be about to engage in an eating disorder relapse. Now, from the perspective of someone that has struggled with eating disorder for, let's face it, most of my life, I will say there's not a day in my life that I do not go through without having an eating disorder thought. The difference is the intention to act on that thought. So, for example, I often have eating disorder thoughts. I shouldn't keep certain foods in the house. Or I need to get rid of this food by throwing it into the trash so that I don't eat all of the macaroni and cheese. I have these thoughts very frequently. However, the difference is the ability to distinguish this thought from an actual fact. So I do not necessarily need to engage in the compulsion of throwing away the macaroni and cheese so that I don't eat it because I have come to terms with the fact that this is an eating disorder thought and that I have the capacity to engage in consuming the amount of macaroni and cheese that I want, and I can have the thought of throwing away the remainder of it, or while still simultaneously engaging in the behavior of just wrapping up that product and putting it in the refrigerator. That's the difference between being in a sustained recovery and engaging in those eating disorder thoughts and actions. So thoughts will come up if you are in eating disorder recovery. Let me guarantee you of that. Having an eating disorder thought does not mean that you have lapsed or relapsed. It is the intent to engage in the behavior which might compromise your eating disorder recovery. So let's really explore some of our thoughts around food and how this might contribute to a relapse. So, some things that can contribute to a relapse are you having obsessive thoughts about food? Do you have increased fear around gaining weight? Are you having an intense desire to diet or restrict food? Are you having an intense desire to engage in exercise in order to modify your body? Are you calorie counting? What is your relationship like with your body right now? Are you finding yourself body checking frequently by looking in the mirrors or tugging on clothes or changing your clothes frequently? Or are you going onto social media and observing other bodies and feeling guilty about your own? All of these things might be an indicator that you're in the mindset of an eating disorder relapse. And even if that's the case, that doesn't mean that that's the route that we have to engage in. That simply means that we need to check ourselves and pull out of our tools for eating disorder recovery so that we don't engage in a full-fledged relapse. What do we do if we've noticed ourselves engaging in some of these eating disorder behaviors, such as body checking or counting calories? This is a really good time to lean on your support team. So this might be a dietitian, a doctor, a therapist, or even a support person at home that knows about your eating disorder that you can share some of these disturbances with. Remember, secrets keep us sick. So the biggest gateway to an eating disorder relapse is by keeping those thoughts that we have and engaging in eating disorder behaviors secret. The more we can expose these, the more that we set ourselves up against an eating disorder relapse.